Well, as many of you can imagine, it has been a great week, and I emphasize again, a great week for me personally. This still doesn't even seem right. The Chicago Cubs are your 2016 World Series champions. Just let that resonate, let that soak in for a minute. The Cubs are World Series champions. And I'm sorry, I've taken a few days away from recording any videos because of being caught up in the World Series and then the aftermath. Frankly, I'm a little bit worn out. So I'm trying to get back into the rhythm and flow of things now. So a couple things to touch on first. For those of you wondering if I'm going to do my weekly NFL videos, yes, they're coming. For those of you wondering if I'm going to do a video about the Chicago Cubs of 2016 season and their glorious World Series championship, the answer is an unequivocal yes. For those of you that are also wondering because of the timing of the year 2016, where we're at right now, am I going to do any videos about the 2016 presidential election? There will at least be one video before Tuesday about the election. It should be my final electoral college map prediction. If you remember back in 2012, I think I only was off by one state in terms of predicting Obama's victory. I missed North Carolina, had everything else perfect. So, just saying, for those of you sometimes that say I don't know politics. All right. So, anyways, let's get to this Q&A. Let's get this taken care of. Wrestling 6798 starts off by asking, what is the biggest need for the Cubs to address this offseason? They really have three of them. I might throw a fourth one in there, but they really have three of them. Number one, they got to figure out what they're going to do with Aroldis Chapman. He wasn't that good in the playoffs, frankly. Are you really willing to plunk down $20 million a year for a guy like that? Yeah, you could say in theory you gave up a lot to get him, but the Cubs for the Chapman deal dealt a lot from their surplus of position players primarily, so it wasn't as costly as people might want to make it out to be. But they got to figure out what they're going to do with Chapman. Number two, they got to figure out what they're going to do with Arrieta. Now, granted, Arrieta is still under contract for another year, but do you run the risk of letting him go into a contract year, pitch like a monster, and then see what the market bears out? And are you really willing to walk away from him and get nothing for it? Are you going to try and desperately lock him up now to kind of cut your losses? You know, it's risky to give a pitcher big, huge money for a long time, a starting pitcher at that, but do you do that? Number three, either way, even if they do re-sign Aroldis Chapman, they've still got to strengthen the back end of that bullpen. You could see that in the World Series in particular. The Cubs didn't have a lot of arms that Joe Maddon really trusted. They could use another arm or two, a quality arm or two, a power arm or two in the back end of that bullpen. I'd assume Dexter Fowler is going to be gone because you've just given Hayward a shit ton of money. Fowler's a better player. He's going to get even more money, you would think, in theory. And you've got to play Hayward somewhere because I don't think they're going to be able to trade him and get that contract off the books. So you're going to have Schwarber coming back, so he's going to play left. Hayward will probably play center. Zobrist will probably play right. So then I have some concerns about how that lineup is going to be constructed. And as bad as Hayward was this year, can you really roll into next year with him hitting leadoff? Or are you going to have to hit somebody like Zobrist there? So they have some needs, but right now I'm just going to bask in the glow of the glory of their World Series title and worry about the rest of the stuff later. Let's go next. The one Jimmy 100. When you run, do you perform better in the heat or the cold? In terms of workouts, if I'm doing tempo work, if I'm doing a distance run, then the colder the better. Even going back to high school, one of my favorite times to run was the winter time back in Rockford, Illinois, when it would be like, below zero. Oh, I loved running outside when it was that cold. I know, crazy, right? I'd be running in t-shirts and shorts and it's 10 below. When I'm doing speed work, if I'm doing anaerobic work, if I'm doing intervals, even VO2 max stuff, then I will be definitely preferring it to be a little bit warmer, especially when it comes to the shorter sprint work, the shorter speed work, then I'm definitely going to prefer it to be warmer. Muscles are looser. Oxygen intake is not as much as a premium. So definitely, and especially being a stupid smoker for so many years, that definitely holds true. Then he also asked, would you say you hate Donald Trump or more so what he stands for? And do people hate him just to hate him, kind of like Roman Reigns? I can't believe we're asking a question involving Roman Reigns and Donald Trump, although it's probably pretty ironic since Donald Trump is a WWE Hall of Famer. Or part of WrestleMania, however you want to look at it. No, the answer to your first question is yes. The second question, no, I don't think people hate him just to hate him. They have plenty of legitimate reasons to hate both him and Hillary Clinton. Let's not I mean, let's be perfectly honest. If you were proudly voting for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, like really proudly voting for them, and not just for a reason of you really, really hate the other person, that's why you're voting for that person, but you really, really proudly support Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, you should really have your head examined because you're fucking lying to yourself, period. I can't believe anybody would probably vote for either one of those two jackasses. But people will vote for him come Tuesday. I did not. I, of course, voted for myself because I felt that was appropriate. I could not ever figure out a way that I could justify voting for Donald Trump, nor did I believe in Hillary Clinton or trust Hillary Clinton. Gary Johnson, Jill Stein, no thank you. So I voted for myself. No, Donald Trump has plenty of reasons to not like Donald Trump, and I've talked about them already, and I'm sure I'll talk about them some more. Swag Pizza 27, do you think the Patriots are going all the way to the Super Bowl? Brady is in God mode right now. You know, the seas have kind of parted in the AFC for the Patriots to do just that. Now we'll see what happens when Big Ben comes back. I still think the Steelers are the one team that could maybe give them some trouble come playoff time, but it looks really good for the Patriots right now. Also, have your thoughts changed on Melvin Gordon? No, I didn't say he was going to be a buster at the NFL level. I didn't say he was going to be a bust. I had a second round grade on him, I believe. If I remember correctly, I think I had him as a fourth rated running back on my board. Um, so I thought he could maybe be a starter, but he hasn't exactly been a stud. He's had some okay games, but some of his performance is kind of touchdown dependent. He hasn't been a consistent force for sure. Blake Bounds, do you believe the Rangers can one day and win a World Series? They were one strike away in 2011. Yes, they were. And if the Chicago Cubs could do it, literally anybody could do it. So keep the faith alive. Believe, believe, believe. David Allen Root, as of now, who do you see as the big players in the election in 2020, assuming Hillary and Dump don't run? Uh, uh, let's split this question. If Trump somehow, oh God, wins, then on the Democratic side, you would probably see Elizabeth Warren, maybe Tim Kaine, perhaps a Cory Booker, which certain segments of the Democratic Party would probably be really thrilled about Cory Booker because they'd be like, well, we've already elected as a country one black man to be president twice. But, not only is Cory Booker black, he also happens to be a gay man. So I don't know if the country is quite ready to vote in a gay black man to be president. Um, but Tim Kaine, Elizabeth Warren, Cory Booker, those would be some of the guys that I could think of off the top of my head. If, oh God, Hillary wins, then on the Republican side, Ted Cruz will be around, Rubio will be around, Mike Pence will probably be around. There's maybe one or two other players. There will be that oddball person that comes into the fold like Herman Cain did for a while in 2012, Ben Carson in 2016. But 4 years away, let's just get through the misery of 2016 first. Thank you. Lucas 14, is 2015 Peyton or 2016 Fitzpatrick a worse quarterback? As bad as 2015 Peyton was, it's still got to be 2016 Fitzpatrick. Oh, God. But the Jets are happy they didn't give him a big deal. Sometimes the best thing to do is to not cave, and they didn't cave. Thank God for them. Andrew Harrington, why can't kickers make field goals in overtime? They keep missing them like crazy. That's a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, that pressure gets to people. Not everybody's cut out to hit those big kicks in those big spots. It's one thing to hit a 40-yarder in the second quarter when your team's up by 10 points. What happens at the end of the game or in overtime where the game, win or lose, rides on your right or left leg? I mean, that's a good question. It's just amazing what pressure can do to people, and that's all it is, not executing. Keys 10, what's your opinion on the Clinton email scandal? Um, hmm. Let me take on the second part of it and Comey and the FBI and what's been up with them. Sometimes what can happen is you release a stuff like this, and in this particular case, it clearly was a political motive. There's no question it was. It doesn't mean that people didn't have the right to know about it. I'm not saying that. It's just there were political motives at play there for the FBI, for James Comey. And sometimes when you do stuff like that, it could potentially backfire because it could come across as a clearly political move. And there's something about the Clintons, even though they have so many scandals and they do so many dirty things, they have a bit of a Teflon element to them. Bill more so than Hillary, but Hillary is still somewhat by association because that Democratic machine has a lot of infrastructure in place to protect them. See the Democratic nominating process in 2016. The email scandal, it doesn't surprise me. You know, Hillary would do some reckless shit like that. As far as the crooked Hillary stuff, she is crooked. I'll give Trump that. She is crooked. Lock her up chance, lock her up chance. I don't know about all that shit. Especially for the emails. There are other things over the years you probably have a better case of locking her up for than that. With that said, I think it's just emblematic of the ridiculousness and the stupidity of our 2016 presidential election cycle that somebody who's sending classified emails on a public server is taking on a guy who's bragging about his ability to grope women and they enjoy it. Just think about that for a second. That's just astounding. Just astounding. The level of stupidity and arrogance of Hillary Clinton is astounding, and that's why I didn't vote for her and could never vote for her. And the level of stupidity and disconnection from reality and ridiculousness and racism and bigotry and hatred that comes from Donald Trump's diarrhea hole is also why I can't support him, which is a shame because in theory, Donald Trump should have been the type of guy that could have been a different type of Republican presidential candidate in a positive sense, could have potentially helped make the party a little bit more inclusive, and really could have changed the American political landscape in D.C. And unfortunately, he's just a more heel version of Republican candidates. What I wouldn't give right now to see a Mitt Romney running. And I'm not a Mitt Romney guy, but you give me those three options. Jesus, Mitt Romney all fucking day long. Give me a break. A Vargas 067. But back really quickly, Keys. In terms of the email scandal, it's typical Clinton bullshit, and she'll end up skating off on it. And the fact that people supported her is fucking ridiculous. The fact that people supported Donald Trump as well is fucking ridiculous. A Vargas 067. Rank these from best to worst to never win a championship. Chris Webber, Charles Barkley, Allen Iverson, Reggie Miller, Tracy McGrady, Patrick Ewing. Let's go in reverse order 6 to 1. Number 6, Tracy McGrady. Number 5, Chris Webber. Yes. Number 4, Reggie Miller. Number 3, Allen Iverson. Number 2, Patrick Ewing. Number 1, Charles Barkley. Six, star players, multiple time All-Stars. Pretty much all of them will end up, I think, being Basketball Hall of Famers. 0 championships between them, and that's unfortunate. And I always really feel bad for Patrick Ewing in a way, with his Georgetown galloping ass. The fact that for so many years his path to the championship was blocked by Jordan, and when Jordan went off to save the universe from basketball-playing aliens called Monstars, then he ran into the Hakeem Olajuwon buzzsaw. And then in '99, when the Knicks made the finals, it's Patrick Ewing that's on the sidelines with the torn Achilles. It's unfortunate for him. I feel really bad for him because it is just bad luck and timing for him. Matt Meffe 2, who represents the anti-Mount Rushmore of U.S. presidents, meaning the 4 worst of all time. The 4 worst. Like the 4 absolutely driveling shits worst presidents of all time. James Buchanan, this country's first gay president, would be on that mountain for sure. George W. Bush would be on that mountain most certainly. So I got to come up with another 2. I personally think that the most overrated president in the history of this country is Woodrow Wilson, his racist fucking ass. I think he did a lot of bad things, and as a result, I would put him on that frickin' Mount Rushmore of worst presidents ever. As far as the 4th one, yeah, Reagan's one of the most overrated too, but I wouldn't put him in the worst category. Maybe John Adams, going back to president number 2, might be another one. Those are just 4 names without spending more time really truly thinking about it. John Adams, James Buchanan, Woodrow Wilson, George W. Bush. Those would be the 4. For some of you, they'll say, well, what about Richard Nixon? Nixon was pretty popular amongst the working class people. And Richard Nixon was a proponent and champion of civil rights before even JFK really came out and was loudly in favor of them. Sometimes it's funny how history is written about these people. And then he also asks, what's the worst sports franchise in history and the worst sports franchise now? The worst sports franchise right now has to be the Cleveland Browns. They're just terrible, god-awful, bad on so many different levels. Worst sports franchise in history. Well, until 2016, you could have maybe said the Chicago Cubs because they had the longest drought of not winning a championship. Now, in terms of the North American sports teams, it's technically, even though we're talking about currently, in terms of history over the past 60, almost 70 years, it's the Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals used to be the St. Louis Cardinals, used to be Chicago Cardinals. They haven't won a world championship since 1947. Therefore, as a result, I'm using championship as the ultimate measuring stick and standard. They are worse than the Cleveland Indians. Let's see here. Troy Johnson, what will it take for my Ravens to do better? They need more youth on defense and could use some better weapons on offense. Follow-up question, how did you come up with the nicknames for Triple H? I like how you use them. It's not about coming up with them. The man is God. Therefore, we refer to him as God. In terms of the Breakfast Club, we all know about the Breakfast Club. I might talk about it more than everybody else, but everybody knows that it exists. It's not necessarily something I'm going to take credit for coming up with because calling him God, everybody knows it. Everybody realizes it. Everybody understands it. And if they read the books of the Hunter, the Hearst, and the Helmsley, they clearly understand that. Barking Frog, how good is Damian Lillard? I think if Portland is a top 4 seed, he's the MVP. Damian Lillard is a beast, and I would agree. He's definitely an MVP candidate, and if Portland is a top 4 seed, he probably has a really good case that he should be the league's most valuable player. I mean, if the Oklahoma City Thunder ended up being a 4 or 5 seed, I think because of certain things at play, Russell Westbrook would get the nod because his numbers at the end of the day will be better than Damian Lillard's. But I wouldn't have a qualm with Damian Lillard being an MVP candidate by any stretch of the imagination. Beef Jerkings, who do you think is better between Tom Brady and Joe Montana? Why do you think one is better over the other? I will take Brady because he's had a longer period of sustained excellence. He has made it to more Super Bowls. He has won just as many Super Bowls. He's had fewer Hall of Famers to play with. And he's had to do it in a period where you're talking about free agency that the 49ers of the 80s did not have to deal with. And Brady never had a Jerry Rice to throw to for an extended period of time. He didn't have, Hall of Famers all over the place like the 49ers had some Hall of Famers in different areas. When I look at the length of career, the increased importance on Brady and his performance being directly related to this team's success in terms of how much they throw compared to run the ball as opposed to the 49ers, it's got to be Brady. Let's see here. Fulia Georgian 1. Derek Carr is playing lights out, and in my opinion, should be in the MVP conversation. What do you think? I completely and totally agree. And I think right now he probably is the leading MVP candidate. I mean, the Raiders are 6-2. That's no joke. And I believe they're undefeated on the road. That's real stuff. Derek Carr is the leader in the clubhouse right now as the league's most valuable player. California EST 96. How would you feel if college football conferences merged, like Pac-12 with Big 12 and Big 10 with ACC, with the SEC picking up the rest? Sounds like a horrible fucking idea to me, honestly. And frankly, didn't we kind of already do that with all the realignment and teams going to different conferences? That's why I lost a lot of desire to follow college football other than for scouting NFL draft prospects, just because of the fact of you got the Big 10 with like 15, 16 fucking teams. The Big 12 has, 9 or 10? It's just so many things are so fucked up and so stupid about college football. I'm moving on. Caleb Henderson. Because I'm voting for you for president, and make sure you spell it right, the last name is Schlegel. Thank you. Who's your vice presidential candidate going to be? If he was alive, it would most certainly be Smokey. There is no question. We would need some 30 pounds of big gray and sexy sex appeal in the Oval Office. I don't know who the vice presidential candidate would be. Probably Tasteless Tony T. How about that? If that doesn't get you hard, and for you wrestling fans and you raging Bret Hart marks, you could sit there and have National Hitman Day. I'm sure all of you get giggly tits about that. Dan, what is it? Dan, David. Okay, took me a second. Reading is my number one skill. Dan, David asked, do you think Jeff Fisher will be fired after the end of the season? Yeah, I actually do, because I think he's horribly botched the handling of Jared Goff. And, Not only that, his team is not in a playoff position. It's one thing if your team is in playoff position, competing for a playoff spot, and makes the playoffs, and you do what you do with Jared Goff. But when you do that with Jared Goff and you're not in that position, then yeah, I think it could be time for him and Les Snead to be shown the door at the end of the season. X Factor 23, which player in the NFL is the most fun to watch in the current state of football? Um, Maybe guys like Antonio Brown, Odell Beckham Jr. They can actually be fun to watch. Uh, Mr. Ant Williams 27, do you think the Cavs will repeat? Yeah, I do at this moment. I know there'll be a lot of buzz and talk about the Warriors and this and that, but the Cavaliers have chemistry, they have cohesiveness, and they still have the best player on the planet, LeBron James. Staley028, your expectations for the Bulls this year? Probably contending for somewhere between a 3 to 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. Maybe they can win one playoff series, and that'll be about it. I don't have huge expectations for them, but we'll see ultimately what happens. Let's see here. J. McClurg 9243. The Steelers have lost 14 times in the last 6 seasons to teams with a combined record of 25 and 87. Who's to blame for it? And I've talked about this a lot, how the Steelers, for some reason, they can beat a lot of really good teams. It's the bad teams that they stumble against over the years, like the Raiders and the Jets. Every year you can book them to lose against these teams, the Buccaneers, so on. Who's to blame for it? Everybody. Coaching staff, the players, the fact that the other teams come in and play them really, really well. Everybody's to blame for it. But you just can't have it. 7 Widar. What's your thoughts on Brock Osweiler? Is it too early to panic? It's like I talked about after the 2016 NFL draft. When you look at the Denver Broncos, would you rather pay what, in all intents and purposes, was a rookie quarterback that was 26 years of age and Brock Osweiler, big time money? Or would you rather trade up to within the back end portion of round 1, draft a 22-year-old Paxton Lynch and pay him rookie salary first round pick money of about $2 million a year, $1.5 million a year? Not a hard decision. As far as Brock Osweiler, he's been shit. I think if you're a Texans fan, it is time to panic a little bit. And it's also time for that organization to learn their fucking lessons. Stop trying to go through the scrap heap. Stop trying to sign quarterbacks in free agency. Stop trying to take the lazy, easy way out. Draft and develop your guy. K. Nokaj asks, Schlake Daddy, I'm 19 and in college, but I'm usually home playing video games. Am I considered a loser? No, because you're in school. Now, if you were 19, you didn't have a job, and you weren't in school, and you were playing video games, then you can't be mad at people for calling you a loser, because that is kind of bummy shit. And I think you know that. That's kind of why you asked the question. Now, if you're looking for validation to say what you're doing right now is okay, do you occasionally get laid, brother? Because then in that case, that certainly helps your case. But no, if you're in school, you're in school. I mean, I wish I could go back to school right now, man. I mean, I'm 35. Do the shit while you can. Enjoy being young while you can enjoy being young. Enjoy college and make the most out of it and do the best you can and do a little bit better. That's what I'll say. And then he also asked LeBron or Larry. At the end of the day, LeBron will be viewed as the greater player than Larry Bird. For personal preferences, I might take Larry Bird, but that's not necessarily to knock on LeBron James. That's just more of a personal preference. Vincent Lospino 2, what do you think about the international games in London and now Mexico? I've got different thoughts on it. It's a way to expand your reach. It's a way to expand your audience potentially. I think it creates some logistical problems for the NFL. And sometimes we don't get the best games, especially with London because of the time differential. I think Mexico, going there does make sense, especially if you have the Cowboys play a home game there at the big, the Azteca Stadium that holds over 100,000 people or some shit. So the Mexico games and, a Canada game or two makes more sense to me personally than a London game does. They also ask, why do you hate the sports media so much? Pretty easy to hate them because you can see the narratives they always try to put in place and the bullshit that they try to spin out there. There's a reason. Who do you prefer between Hillary and Trump? And give me either of those two as answers only. I don't want you to say a third-party candidate or yourself. Okay, so holding the gun to my head, asking me at the end of the day, if somebody forced me to vote for either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or who I thought would be more effective as a president or not as bad as a president, the answer would be Hillary. I dislike her tremendously, almost as much as I dislike Trump. I actually feel like Hillary Clinton, in terms of judgment, doesn't have the right judgment or temperament to be president either. Um, Her behaviors are concerning to me. But at the end of the day, I think she would be better suited to be president than Donald Trump. So on Tuesday night, if Donald Trump is elected president, I will say shame on this country, and people are fucking stupid and they deserve what they get the next 4 years. If Hillary Clinton is elected president, I will say shame on this country for not supporting like a Bernie Sanders or finding another option. And this country deserves what it gets, but I won't have the same doom and gloom apocalypse type of feeling that I would if Trump was elected president. I mean, let's be honest. In terms of actually being the type of person that makes important decisions, um, yeah, Hillary is better suited for that. Doesn't mean I'd like either one of them as president, because I most certainly would not. Um, Lucas14 also asked, who do you think is better between Wentz and Prescott? Carson Wentz. I think Carson Wentz is right now. Um, and has your opinion changed on Joey Bosa as a prospect after seeing him do very well in his first few starts? I didn't say he was going to be a bust. And I believe I still had a first round grade on him. I just questioned the fit in a 3-4 defense. And some of what I've seen, and I haven't seen a lot of Chargers action since Joey Bosa's come in. Um, it seems like they're deploying him in some 4-3 type of look situations, which is where he was better suited to begin with. And I talked about the fact that he could be a pretty good defensive end at the NFL level playing in the 4-3. Now, maybe some of the talk about him in the pre-draft process motivated him, and I hope it did. It certainly looked like it did, because this is not the same guy I saw in his junior year at Ohio State. And you cannot fucking sit there and tell me that it is. It is not the same guy. If you believe that, you clearly did not watch him at Ohio State as a junior. No way. He's more decisive. He's more explosive. He plays with a better motor. He has more fire, even though he still has moments where he kind of backs off. Slimy asks, how do you feel the Obama administration performed overall? And do you think Michelle should run for a position at some point? Yes, that position should be like this. As far as the Obama administration, there have been some good things. The auto bailout, while not popular, was effective. The CFPB, while it has its issues, it was something that needed to be put in place. There has been a sustained level of job growth, although you could question the quality of the job growth, the type of jobs there have been. Um, it's kind of a mixed bag for me. I think, if anything, the big winner of the 2016 election between Trump and Hillary probably is Obama, because some people maybe that weren't big fans of Obama will look at it and say, well, maybe he wasn't so bad by comparison. I've been a little bit disappointed. I think at times, his leadership has been a little lacking. I thought he was going to be better at being able to get people to follow him and work with him. Now, granted, when people sit there and intentionally set out to sabotage him, that's not an easy environment to perform in. I don't care who the hell you are, but that's the environment you have. That's the situation you have to deal with. But some of his big things, such as Obamacare, the problem itself is not Obamacare or the premise of trying to rectify the healthcare system. The problem is that Obamacare ended up being just another giveaway to the insurance industry, and still allowing them to manipulate and control the market on the front end and then on the back end with medical malpractice insurance, what have you, and what they are able to charge hospitals and doctors and so on and so forth. That's the problem. And no, if you think the Republican solution of subsidized bullshit is going to work, it's the same fucking thing. The problem is, a lot of times, I think, with Obama's administration is, instead of really diving in and fixing the issues, there were like band-aids and patchwork stuff, and that was unfortunate. He should have been better than what he was. I don't think he's been as bad as a lot of people make him out to be. I voted for him twice, although I hedged really badly in 2012 and did almost vote for Gary Johnson. But, at the end of the day, I won't be some raging Obama mark that talks about how great he was. But by comparison to his predecessor, George W. Bush, he's light years better. In terms of compared to Bill Clinton, who I think gets a lot of unjust accolades, I think Obama measures up more than people want to maybe give him credit for, especially when you factor in the circumstances and situations that he was put into. So that's kind of what it is. All right, well, thanks you guys for this Q&A. Sorry it took so long, but I enjoyed it. I'll have some other videos coming up soon. Stay tuned.